The financial world is about to witness a transformation. So massive, so meticulously engineered, and so deeply rooted in a decade-long plan that honestly very few even understand what's unfolding behind closed doors. For years, the conversation around Ripple, this SE and the XRP escrow has been framed as a legal conflict, a regulatory battle, or, corporate fight for survival. But what if this entire journey, every lawsuit, every delay, every hearing, every unexplained silence, where we also have to work together to something bigger, something coordinated, something designed, something that ends with a single decisive move capable of permanently rewriting the global liquidity landscape and positioning XRP as the backbone of the world's financial infrastructure. Because now, insiders, former Ripple executives, and technical architects have all confirmed one critical truth that, honestly, the public was never supposed to fully grasp. Ripple can burn the escrow, all of it, anytime. And that one capability is the key to the most explosive, world-shifting financial reset ever conceived. A reset that culminates in what many call Ripple's $10,000 XRP master plan. For years, the escrow was presented as a safety mechanism, a protective supply locking feature designed to reassure partners, institutions, and regulators that Ripple couldn't just dump tokens onto the market. But the deeper reality, as confirmed by Ripple's former director of engineering, is that validators can vote to burn the entire escrow, instantly deleting tens of billions of XRP from existence, not locking, not releasing, not delaying, destroying. This revelation changes everything, because if XRP is going to become the universal liquidity layer for high-value settlements, cross-border flows, tokenized assets, CBDCs, real-time treasury operations, and quadrillions in global financial instruments, its supply cannot remain a question mark. It must be fixed, known, predictable, and secure enough for sovereign nations and multi-trillion-dollar institutions to rely on it as infrastructure. And here lies the heart of the master plan. The settlement with the SEC is not about fines, regulation, or compliance. It's about supply, it's about certainty, it's about clearing the runway for XRP to function as the liquidity standard of the modern era. And the price trajectory needed for that role is not $1 or $10 or even $100. When handling trillion-dollar corridors, bridging tokenized real-world assets, and providing liquidity for international settlement while replacing pre-funded Nostro accounts, the numbers grow exponentially. Suddenly, $10,000 per XRP is not a fantasy. It becomes the mathematically necessary valuation for global-scale operations. Behind the scenes, Ripple has been preparing for this endgame for over a decade. The lawsuit slowed nothing. If anything, it created the cover Ripple needed to quietly build partnerships with central banks, governments, and financial institutions that would eventually require XRP at scale. While the world debated whether XRP was a security, RippleNet evolved into the nervous system for the future of cross-border value transfer. The private ledgers for CBDCs matured, the tokenization framework strengthened, the liquidity hub expanded, and meanwhile, the escrow remained the single unresolved weight around XRP's neck. Every institution watching XRP, banks, payment giants, sovereign wealth funds, had one obstacle: supply overhang. They understood the technology, they loved the settlement speed, they supported the regulatory trajectory, but they had one question: what happens to that 50+ billion XRP still sitting in escrow? The answer, now on the table for the first time, is the master plan. Ripple's path to permanent regulatory clarity is not just about settling the case, it is about eliminating the very thing the SEC has been weaponizing, the escrow. And imagine the optics. Imagine the impact. A historic settlement where Ripple agrees to final regulatory classification, global clarity, the green light for expansion, and in exchange, Ripple triggers the validator-driven vote to burn the entire escrow. Overnight, the $40+ billion locked supply evaporates, 90% of the outstanding supply vanishes. Suddenly, XRP is one of the rarest assets on Earth, with utility demand skyrocketing just as institutions arrive. Every country, every bank, every liquidity provider suddenly has to acquire XRP openly on the market, not through Ripple sales. The narrative flips instantly. From Ripple controls the supply to XRP is now the scarcest institutional-grade liquidity asset available. This is where the price dynamic becomes really unavoidable. Because once the escrow burn is executed, The global financial system faces a supply crisis unlike anything we've seen in modern history. A supply shock of this magnitude paired with inbound institutional utility creates an explosion that honestly no order book can contain. Banks needing tens of millions of XRP each, CBDCs needing liquidity rails for instant FX settlement, tokenized commodities moving across borders, trade finance, securities, derivatives, real estate tokenization. Every market that moves trillions requires deep programmable liquidity. And with the supply evaporated and the demand fixed into the structure of the financial system, price must adjust upward until equilibrium is reached. That equilibrium, when factoring in trillions in daily settlement and eliminating the need for nostro accounts entirely, pushes XRP into valuations only achievable through, extreme scarcity. So the math behind these corridors doesn't care about opinions or emotions. If XRP is the universal bridge asset, it eventually price adjusts into the multiple thousands, and this insiders say is the true long-term strategy Ripple has been orchestrating. Not a pump, not speculation, but structural appreciation tied directly to utility scaling beyond anything crypto has ever witnessed. Ripple doesn't need to manipulate the price, they don't need to market, they don't need hype, they simply let global adoption increase, remove the only limiting factor, which is the escrow, and allow the market to discover the necessary valuation. At $10,000 per XRP, Ripple achieves global liquidity without needing trillions of coins. Banks settle instantly with minimal slippage. Nations use XRP as the neutral digital bridge for cross-currency operations, and Ripple transitions from crypto company to global infrastructure provider. Even the SEC's internal understanding of digital assets is rumored to be shifting. They now realize they cannot fight tokenization, they cannot contain institutional adoption, and they cannot stop the shift from pre-funded accounts to on-demand liquidity. The only path forward is compromise, and that compromise, according to insiders familiar with the discussions, centers on a final once-in-history event. Ripple agrees to either permanently lock or destroy its escrow holdings, eliminating any future claims of reliance, expectation, or centralization. The moment that deal is signed, XRP is free, not just legally, but structurally. No more overhang, no more uncertainty, no more artificial ceiling suppressing price discovery. At that moment, the liquidity pipeline opens globally. Asia, the Middle East, Europe, South America, regions already building tokenized settlement networks, turn the switch and integrate XRP at institutional scale. The burn becomes the catalyst, the settlement becomes the gateway, the master plan becomes visible for the first time, and the market, which has underestimated XRP for a decade, suddenly realizes the truth. XRP was never designed to be a speculative token. It was engineered to be the financial bloodstream of a fully digital tokenized real-time global economy. When that moment arrives, when Ripple executes the final move, people will look back and understand that everything was leading here. Every partnership, every regulatory battle, every escrow release, every quiet statement from insiders hinting at supply control, every technological upgrade, all of these are, converging into the single greatest supply shock and utility explosion in the history of digital assets. This is not just a price prediction, this is not a theory, this is a structural blueprint for how global liquidity is being rebuilt from the ground up. The escrow burn is the liver, the SEC settlement is the trigger, the global adoption wave is the engine, and the final valuation, whether 1,000, 10,000 or more, is simply the mathematical outcome of a system that requires XRP at scale. The master plan is unfolding. The world just hasn't realized it yet. Oh, please remember, I am not a licensed financial advisor. The content presented in these videos is honestly, purely for entertainment purposes. I always encourage viewers to conduct their own research and consult with professionals before